Time for a bit of backstory. I've been a fan of the sweet science since I was pretty young. 6 years old, dad on couch, boxing match on TV. I said all of this in my Fight Night review, go watch that, it's good, and if you make it to the end, I'll invite you to my birthday party. I promise there will be cake this time. But alongside my discovery of boxing, I discovered something else at an even earlier age. Anime. Yes, you might be alarmed that someone with the voice of smooth gravel, a face like a Dr. Seuss character, and the social skills of an axolotl is into anime. But I am. I'm not proud of it, but Sailor Moon was one of the very first shows I obsessed over as a kid. I loved everything about it, the bright colors, the fun characters, the expressive art style, just how everything looked and moved. Anime is my second love outside of punching things. And turns out, there's quite a few anime about guys that just punch things. Damn it, come on. That's not fucking working.
You can't even see the fucking mess!
Yes, so at the time of recording this, I am feeling a little bit under the weather, and I've been really busy with my new job lately, so there's that. I have not had time to deal with any of this at all. And I've had this script written for maybe about a month. So that's why I'm getting it out of the way now. And I also am just, I am so goddamn lazy. I really am. You don't want to see the kitchen. When I was 12 years old, the internet was starting to become more and more common, and eventually halfway through grade 6, my household finally joined the internet. Yes, joined. It's like a club. It's not so exclusive anymore. It used to be. With our family computer, my time spent online was pretty limited, but thanks to the marvels of having dysgraphia. It's like dyslexia, but for writing. I was given a personal laptop by my school, and you know what this meant? I mean, it meant a lot of things. But pair a 12-year-old, a laptop, and unattentive parents. You get a 12-year-old with unsupervised access to the internet. It was just as horrifying as you would have imagined. And it's in this weird, wonderful place, and with complete lack of adult supervision, that I was able to find decades of boxing-related content in mere days. I consumed anything I could. I would pirate the whole-ass Rocky franchise, entire fight cards. Every single boxer's fighting career was at the whim of my prepubescent fingertips. And eventually, I discovered that the internet was also home to many sites for illegally viewing anime, which you should never do because it will ruin your life, and got absolutely hooked with a series called Hajime no Ippo. Roughly translated to The First Step, the show was about a youth named Ippo Makunouchi who's saved by Elvis on Trenbolone and takes up the wonderful sport of boxing. While it presents itself as a shonen anime with intense battles and bigger-than-life characters, the anime is more of a slice-of-life show. Like, imagine K-On!, but instead of a rock band, the girls are just giving other dudes cauliflower ear. It's an endearing show that really spoke to 12-year-old me, maybe because the protagonist had a similar sort of school life that I had, and also just wanted to know what it was like to break free from the mundane. He sought strength and growth, which is a thing that I think all boxers are after. And I mean, what else are you going to do when you're 12 years old and you're just freshly introduced to the internet? I mean, I could have looked up far worse things that people were doing with fists. And amazingly, Hajime no Ippo actually has quite a few games based off of it. Yeah, not quite as many as, say, Dragon Ball or One Piece or fucking even Fist of the North Star, but enough to be noticeable. And some of them are well regarded as some of the best boxing games ever made. Yeah, I'm honestly amazed at how many games this franchise has. From the PS1 to the PS2 and 3, GBA, DS, PSP, even the Wii managed to get its very own exclusive entry. Hell, if you ever played Judgment and got to experience its surprisingly solid boxing minigame that is way deeper than it has any right to be, you've pretty much played a Hajime no Ippo game, because the developers that worked on that minigame handled the game on the PS Triple Ballin'. I'm stealing that, Matt McMuscles, no, I will not apologize. I love it. For starters, we have a couple modes, and
While I've called games with more gameplay modes bare bones, VB2 is far from it. What's self-explanatory is the exhibition and tournament modes. They're your standard versus and tournament modes. Appreciate them. And they are exactly as advertised. But story mode is a rather long and beefy cinematic story mode, which you don't typically see in a lot of boxing games.
Well, yeah, this is a licensed game. A licensed anime game. So much like Budokai 1 and it adapting Dragon Ball Z, this pretty much just retells the plot of Hajime no Ippo, covering all of the major events up to a certain point, and I won't be going over the course of events in the story mode. At least, not the general story beats. See, I am still reading the manga, and while I'm very much past the point that this game goes to, I am going to avoid talking about the general plot in hopes that it might also inspire you to read it as well. Seriously, if you like good underdog stories or just want something new, I heavily insist that you read the manga. Or watch the anime. The anime is not as good, but it's still good.
Which isn't to say I won't be covering the story mode, because I will be, just not the general events of the plot. As previously stated, the story mode covers the plot of the anime up until a certain point, and kind of like how you'd expect the challenges to ramp up for the protagonist, you don't really get that from the first act of the story. A lot of the opponents I faced were essentially just knuckle sponges, in that they did nothing but absorb blunt force trauma with their faces, and for the most part went down in the first round with no difficulty or issues on my part. The controls of the game are pretty standard, with square and triangle being your straight punches and X and circle being your hooks. Uppercuts are performed by holding R2 and L2, much like in Fight Night, is used for head movement. And I'm going to level with you. This head movement? Yeah, it is the best, most reliable head movement in any boxing game I have ever played. Bobbing and weaving out of the way of oncoming punches just works so damn well and feels amazing. You literally feel like you are in complete and total control of your boxer at all times. You can even advance while using it, making it so that you can apply pressure while also keeping your easily punchable noggin out of the way of the noggin punches. If I had to cite one place where I had issues with the controls, it's in how blocking works in this game. It's done by pressing and holding R1, and at first it feels kind of unreliable. Like a lot of times I would hold it and punches would still get through, but then I actually figured out how blocking works. See, for the most part, blocking is automatic. Your hands have a hitbox, and when the hitbox on your boxer's hands touches the opponent's, it nullifies the damage. All the R1 button actually does is work as a very quick parry. Which, yes, does make this the worst parrying system I can think of, but honestly, when everything else is so good, I'll let it slide. You see, the game doesn't actually want you to block. It wants you to do something revolutionary, something bizarre. Dodge! It wants you to get the fuck out of the way of punches, utilizing niche and radical concepts like footwork and head movement. And to add to that, is a really solid footwork system. Not to always compare this game to Fight Night, but Fight Night is kind of where the bar is set right now. But Fight Night's footwork mechanics were fine, they worked. I never felt like they were in the way, but I also never felt like they were anything particularly special. But Victorious Boxers 2's footwork, oh yeah, that feels a bit more intricate. Oftentimes, I found myself having to reset for certain punches or try to get them from a different angle, or have to actually think, oh, is he moving to this side? Before throwing a punch. And I had to work even harder to keep my opponent where I actually wanted them. Keep in mind that all of these mechanics that I'm gushing about are all available to the CPU, and they will absolutely use them against you without any second thought. The AI in this game is damn good.
I would like to remind you that this is a fucking licensed anime game. This isn't meant to be a simulation, yet somehow it's doing shit that even the quote-unquote real boxing sims have never touched. Even Undisputed, God, I hate that name. Now when I say Undisputed, I have to explain if I'm talking about the really good UFC games or the worst boxing game in years. It's also the only one in years. Still shit.
Did I say my only issue was with the blocking? That's a lie. Another issue is the locomotion in this game. Yeah, locomotion. Like a train, you know what I mean, the movement. See, by default, the game operates using tank controls. Think old school Resident Evil. Up is always forward, left and right are always turning, and down is how you retreat. I wish I could tell you why the game is set up like this, but your guess is honestly as good as mine. And much like Capcom's iconic zombie-popping cringe fest, I don't like this style of controls. Thankfully, you aren't exactly married to them, so you can alter how they function in the options menu. There's even an option to make it so that they're tied to whatever camera angle you prefer, so that you always have the ideal controls.
I feel like I need to discuss the camera options in Victorious Boxers 2 before we move on, because, there's a lot.
Okay, you may have noticed in my Fight Night review that I got a bit of footage from various camera angles. This was because I actually have issues with depth perception in certain games, and oftentimes I wouldn't be sure if I'd be able to land an uppercut or a hook, so I'd change the camera angle to make it a little more bearable. And honestly, never did I find one that was just right. Fight Night's camera was either too close or too far or just awkward, making it somewhat difficult to play the game at times. I still liked it and didn't feel that it was too limiting, but it was an issue. But Victorious Boxers 2 allows you to select from about 10 different camera angles, and they work perfectly. You have side views, corner views, third person over the shoulder, ref's views, no, you never see any ref in the ring, and pretty much whatever other kind of angle you could possibly want. And I never once faced any issues. The only time I'd ever change the angle was because I wanted to, and it makes for a great experience. I do wish there was a first-person view, though I know Fight Night Round 3 has that, and I kind of wish more boxing games did. Every angle is great and adds to the overall enjoyment of an already solid game.
You know, I really do think that knockdowns are probably one of the most important things with boxing games, and I haven't really had a chance in the script to talk about them yet. There's not a reason. I just haven't found the best spot in the review to discuss them. So here we go. You might remember that in Fight Night we had ragdoll physics for the knockdowns. Yeah, Victorious Boxers 2 says, fuck that shit. We are going to put a man in a mocap suit. Takeshi over there is gonna punch him in the fucking face. I am making that up. But you'll see these knockdowns and you will think, maybe he's not. But maybe I am.
I mean, ragdolls look kinda realistic if you ignore all the times where they don't. They're random, so they don't exactly match what would happen in real life, and sometimes you get some weird shit. But the knockdowns in this game are motion captured, and done so with a lot of detail and flourish. When your hands connect with the opponent, they will sometimes fall backwards into the ropes, bounce off them, roll a bit, or even just take a knee. Yes, we have kneeling downs in this game. Fight Night has never had them. Ever. And there's no stupid minigame to get back up, it's just based on how much damage you've taken and how much stamina you have left. How novel. There's even double knockdowns. Yes, if your opponent knocks you down and gets clipped by your fist mid-fall, they can get knocked down by it, making for some pretty damn cool moments like this was the fucking Tenkaichi Budokai or some shit. Again, I would like to remind you this is a licensed anime game. Why is this game this realistic? Nobody asked for this. I mean, I love it. I fucking love it. But the developers did not have to go this hard. You know that meme of the guy playing the flaming piano? Yeah, this is the video game equivalent of that. All they had to do was make some cheap cash grab for some obscure boxing cartoon, and yet somehow pump out a game that's more detailed than actual boxing simulations. And yeah, well, the knockdown animations are canned and heavily mocapped to the point where I sincerely believe they put somebody in a mocap suit and punched him the fuck out just to get them, they're still great. They portray a sense of realism, and in some ways, yeah, ragdoll knockdowns are neat, but they often result in things like UFC 2's Monkey D. Luffy shit, or watching Lennox Lewis have a seizure on the mat. Here, the knockdowns are realistic and varied enough that you don't really notice that there's only a few of them. And you might also have noticed there's no HUD to speak of. You don't see the timer unless it's in view, there's no health or stamina bars, nothing. You have to be able to just eyeball your boxer's condition based on how they're moving. If you're starting to slow down a bit, back off and recover your stamina, or else you might just get put down to the canvas. And speaking of the speed, this game is fucking fast as shit, which does tend to make the actual fighting feel a bit more arcadey, but okay, I need to discuss this on camera.
Okay, so I know that when arcade elements get brought up in combat sports games, everyone likes to throw a shit fit about how unrealistic it is. Everyone will point to trash like UFC 4 or Supremacy MMA and say those games sucked because they were too arcadey. No, that's simply not true. Those games sucked, and this is gonna be huge to those two guys that were defending Supremacy MMA. They sucked because they sucked. The arcade elements are not what made them bad. Hell, one of the best boxing games of all time is a fucking arcade port on the NES. No. The arcade-style elements are not what decide if a game is good or bad. Compare Doom to Call of Duty. Yes, Call of Duty might have more realistic shit like bullet drop, but it doesn't allow me to dismember imps with my bare fucking hands. Unrealistic? Yes. Metal? Oh yeah. Very.
Honestly, I like the speed. It's fast and exciting, but not so much so that the more simulation-oriented mechanics feel like they aren't there. It's a very nice blend of white-knuckle arcade action with a chewy simulation center. You have to balance the urge to just wildly swing your arms while maintaining your stamina and health, and to be honest, it helps make this one of the most fun and satisfying boxing games I've ever played, and really, that's what matters. Fun. Yes, the game does at times just become rock'em sock'em robots, but it's a heavily calculated game of rock'em sock'em robots. You still have to manage things like stamina and health, and just going in and throwing hands like you're fucking Kenshiro from Fist of the North Star is a very good way to find out what the inside of a boxing glove tastes like. And this game is fucking hard as shit, so that taste is something you will probably get pretty accustomed to. Once you get to Act 2 and you have to fight Volk Zangief as Takeshi Sendo, the game decides that it wants to get hard as fuck. This one fight took me 4 goddamn hours. I would knock Volk down 5 to maybe 6 times a fight, and each time this motherfucker kept getting up like he was the goddamn Terminator, with Ultra Instinct and the fucking Chaos Emeralds, and knock me down twice, where my character just decided, yeah, you know what? The canvas is a lot comfier than one would think, and fucking stay there. This man literally told me I would lose, and my only response was yes I will. And of course, there's no ref, because no way in fuck is the Japanese athletic committee going to find 2 motherfuckers willing to get into an enclosed space with this man. Much like the Street Fighter character he shares a name with, this bastard had my head spinning by the time he was done. And it's only through sheer dumb luck that I managed to put him down ever. This man was harder than Muhammad Ali was. I can't believe I'm saying that, but if I was going purely on how Ali was in Fight Night, yeah, this like 120-pound dude from fucking Australia or whatever, yeah, would've whooped his ass.
I would also like to take this time to remind you that I am only halfway through the story. Half.
You might also notice that the visuals in this game are kinda... okay, I won't sugarcoat it. Partially because we're cutting for the fights and have to cut down on our carbs, but this game looks like dog shit at times. Textures are late PS1 quality, and oftentimes clothing just sits on the characters' models. There's some kinda sus animations too, like, ippo no, we don't do that here. What's even worse is when a character speaks, And for some weird reason, there's no voice acting in the cutscenes, so I hope you don't have dyslexia. But the characters all move their mouths like they're puppets. Like, why does this guy look like he's from Blark & Son or Mr. Meaty?
Why the fuck did I mention Mr. Meaty? Out of any show, any weird Canadian TV show to reference, that's the one that I reference. I could have referenced a bunch of them. I can't name them right now, but I could have referenced them. Nonalon. There we go. That's a Canadian show with puppets I could have referenced. I'm sure.
I do think that the visuals have their highlights though. The actual boxers' physiques all look fantastic, with a more sculpted look like Budokai 1, detailing all the muscle. As a big, totally hetero fan of bodybuilding physiques, I love this look. Yeah, sure, the faces look like ungodly abominations, but the rest of the characters all look great, except Mishiba, who I'm fairly sure crawled his ass out from the deepest parts of the abyss so deep that H.P. Lovecraft didn't write about him out of sheer terror. And there's no worse looking model in this game than the bear.
Nothing. I repeat, nothing in my life thus far could have prepared me for this. I never once in my entire fucking life thought that I would see a ripped to shit Elvis Presley impersonator throwing hands with a fucking Japanese black bear.
First off, ignoring how absolutely batshit insane this entire situation is, the bear flips between being a realistic bear, walking on all fours, and sometimes taking up a boxing stance. I'm at a loss for words here. What do I say about this? The bear is taking up a boxing stance. And of course, you get to play as an Anavar-fueled Elvis Presley impersonator. The only suspicious minds here are the ones at the Japanese anti-doping agency. And I'm sorry to rag on about this, I'll move on soon. I promise. But the bear was actually easier than Zangief. The bear was easier to beat, and that means that Zangief probably could have fucked this bear up. And of course, I did skip the cutscenes, but you also do get the option to just fast forward through them, which I highly recommend doing, especially while you're high, because then you get to have the fucking chipmunks call the bout. And I don't know if I've said this yet, but this game is hard as fuck. At the end of Act 2, it's a recreation of the fight between Ippo and Takeshi Sendo, and this guy made me eat my fucking teeth. Like, holy shit. I'd have better luck actually boxing a regional champion. It's probably easier. The difficulty spikes in this game are insane. And while it only serves to make it more satisfying when you actually do win, it's fucking frustrating to have to restart multiple times just to beat one guy. And also, never, ever count on the judges in this game. They will almost always give it to your opponent, even if you've been using their face as a speed bag for 10 solid rounds. But, once I figured him out, he was still a bitch, but a fun one. See, Sendo is fast and strong, and abuses every mechanic that he possibly can. I imagine that when Majin Buu gets to the end of Budokai 2, his final boss is fucking Sendo. Dude hits hard, hits fast, and much like an aspiring Hollywood actress in Harvey Weinstein's house, once he has you in range, you are going to be struggling to fight him off. My advice is to not stand and trade with him, at least at first. You're going to be very tempted to try and return his punches back to sender, but bide your time. Anytime you throw, go for the body. Chop him down at the waist so that he can't rely on his speed in the later rounds. And when he's stunned, go for an uppercut to that cute little pretty boy face of his. and make it so that his next meal can only possibly be consumed from a shaker cup. It took me forever, but after that, the rest of Act 2 is a joke. Except for Mashiba. Fucking Mashiba! On to Act 3. Act 3 is the last chunk of the game's main story, and everything after this is pretty much just side stuff. And it's also home to the hardest fight thus far, even more so than Sendo, Arie. Arie has a mullet, and as we all know, mullets give you unparalleled, godlike boxing powers. And if that isn't enough of a reason to want to remove him from the census list, he's also annoying as fuck to fight. It took me so many goddamn tries, as this 40-minute fucking video right here will detail, and eventually, I took my hands, which glowed with an awesome power, and used my love, my anger, and all of my sorrow to knock his 1990s looking ass right onto the canvas. And after that, oh yeah, it was pretty smooth sailing actually. Sadly, there's no sort of commentary during the fights themselves, which I get because you don't really get a lot of it in the show, but I don't know, maybe get like 2 veteran anime VAs to provide some flavor, kind of like how they get old retired boxers to commentate on fights. Overall, the story mode pretty much runs through to the fight between Takamura and Brian Hawk, which is, in my humble opinion, the absolute greatest fight in anime history. Seriously, if you don't believe me, go watch it, it's amazing. It's got everything you could ever want from an anime fight and a boxing match, and Brian Hawk is such an unlikable asshole that you just have to love him as a villain. He really does fit the Ivan Drago role, but he kinda just dials it up to 11. And sadly, he wasn't as hard to beat in this game as I hoped. And that might be because some of the special moves kind of break the game a lot. And after that, you get a little flashback of Ippo's trainer in the most fun of times, post-World War II Japan, which gives us some outdoor rings to use in exhibition mode, which I honestly really like. It's nice to see more grassroots type venues in boxing games, and I'm always disappointed that Fight Night never bothers with that. Like, I don't know, man, give us some outdoor stuff. Give us some fresh air with our cauliflower ear, damn it. As for the roster of the game, it's pretty big, actually. Obviously, there's no licensed fighters here, it's all just people from the anime, and pretty much everyone that shows up in story mode is here, but you can also use passwords to unlock a bunch of bonus fighters, like this guy. I don't know what his deal is, but I hate him.
You can play as the bear in an actual arena. Somebody at the Japanese Athletics Commission allowed this. You beautiful, brilliant madman.
Okay, this is fucking funny as shit. You can play as the bear, and it goes about as well as you'd expect. The funniest part is that instead of disemboweling his opponent, the bear follows the rules of boxing and goes and stands at a neutral corner. He's got the worst animations in the entire game, but they're so damn funny that I don't even care. In fact, instead of docking points, I'm going to add a special bear point just for the bear. You can even play as a pair of old men with no speed, no stamina, no strength, and it's just like playing Fight Night Round 3.
And look, it's not just me that's singing the praises of this game. Back in the day, this game got loads of love. Electronic Playground nominated the first game, which, I mean, this is literally just a carbon copy of, for the best console fighting game of 2002, which it lost to Dead or Alive 3. It was robbed. This is way better than DOA 3. It's the only one in the series I don't like. Even now, people on YouTube call this the best boxing game nobody has played. I keep suggesting this shit to Marshall Mind. Somebody, show him this video. Tell him to play this fucking game. Boxing Fanatico did it. I love that, guys. This shit's great. And that's why Victorious Boxers 2 is getting a perfect score of 5 fight clubs out of 5 with 1 bonus bear point, bringing its score to the first ever on the channel 6 out of 5.
Because much like Fight Club, you don't talk about it. But damn, do I wish more people did. Out of any boxing game I have ever played, none of them have provided me with this level of enjoyment. From the perfect balance of arcade and simulation gameplay, to the fantastic controls, decent enough music, and the massive roster, this game just simply kicks ass on so many levels. Yes, it does look like a puppet show recreation of Raging Bull, but if you look past the ass-ugly visuals and just focus on the gameplay, which, I don't know, I feel like one is a little more important than the other, you will find one of the best boxing games of all time on a console that already has quite a few good punching sims on it. My only major gripe is the inconsistent difficulty. I have never played a game that went from white knuckle challenge to the point where I would have to take a break out of sheer frustration, and then put me up against a school-paced sommelier for the next bout.
If you can find it, I highly recommend playing the ever-loving shit out of it. And once you get bored, because I mean that happens with every game, no matter how good, pick up the manga. The author was actually considered to take over Berserk after Kentaro Miura passed away, and I mean, I hate Berserk, I'm sorry, I hate to say it, but it's probably the best piece of fiction ever written. And if the guy that made this nearly got to work on that, then you gotta know it's good. That's gotta be some sort of green flag that it's awesome. And of course, you can play as a bear, which immediately makes it better than any other boxing game ever made. Yes, I am including the one where your quarterman performs oral sex on you between rounds. I'm going to have to explain that eventually.